If you get a physical injury, like let's say you accidentally grab a burning hot pan right out of the oven, your immediate reaction is just, well, it's purely instinctual.
Oh, absolutely. You just drop the pan immediately.
Right, you drop it, you run your hand under cold water, you basically do whatever it takes to stop the burning and start the healing process right that exact second.
Yeah, it's an absolute reflex. I mean, self-preservation just kicks in before you even have a conscious chance to think about it. The body just knows it needs to minimize the damage.
Exactly. But when it comes to emotional pain, when someone hurts us or, a relationship totally shatters, we tend to do the exact opposite of that.
We really do. We hold on tight.
We don't drop the burning pan. We hold on to it. We stare at it. We show it to our friends and say, can you believe how hot this pan is?
Yeah, look what this person did to my hand.
Right. So today, for everyone listening, we are looking at a highly counterintuitive framework from Rhonda Byrne's book, The Magic. Specifically, we're diving into chapter 15, which is all about putting that pan down.
It's a really fascinating method for unilaterally fixing broken relationships, turning what the book calls hot coals into gold.
And the core premise here is just, wow, it's wild, but it's incredibly empowering. Byrne proposes that you can completely transform a relationship or even heal a deeply broken heart entirely without the other person's participation.
Right, which is huge. You don't need an apology from them. You don't need closure in the traditional sense.
None of that. You can do it all just by changing your internal script.
And we are going to break down, not just what this specific practice is, but really why it systematically disarms our deepest emotional defense mechanisms. Because Byrne isn't just offering a nice, fluffy platitude here.
No, definitely not.
She is describing a very specific, very mechanical psychological pivot.
I think we have to start with the root of the problem, though. Byrne points out that when we are faced with a difficult relationship, like, say, a toxic boss or an ex or just a family member who drives you completely crazy, our default human setting is always blame.
Always. Blame is just the mind's way of trying to establish control over a really painful situation. It's a defense mechanism, plain and simple.
Right?
But Byrne notes something really crucial about this state of mind. When we are busy blaming the other person for the problems we have with them, we do not possess a single shred of gratitude.
They just can't exist together.
Exactly. They are completely mutually exclusive states.
Which brings us to this incredible quote from the founder of Buddhism, Gautama Buddha, that Byrne actually includes in the text. It paints such a profound picture of what blame actually does to us.
Oh, I love this quote. It goes, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we really need to look at the mechanics of that anger. The usual cliche here is, holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Right, we've all heard that one.
Yeah, but I think a much better way to look at it, especially for anyone listening right now who's just trying to manage a super busy life, is to compare it to your smartphone.
Oh, that's an interesting way to frame it.
Yeah, think about it like this. Holding onto resentment is like leaving 10 incredibly heavy, data-intensive applications running in the background of your phone.
Oh, wow.
You're walking around wondering why your battery is constantly draining by noon, why your brain feels so sluggish, why you can't process new information at work, or, I don't know, just be present with your kids.
Because your emotional RAM is entirely eaten up by this background anger.
Exactly. The person who wronged you isn't losing any battery at all. You are.
That is such a brilliant way to conceptualize it. The bad feelings you harbor towards someone else are literally physically consuming your cognitive resources.
They're draining the battery.
Right. When your brain is wrapped around a grievance, your sympathetic nervous system is engaged. You are basically in a mild, continuous state of fight or flight.
Which is exhausting.
It's totally exhausting. So the ultimate goal of the practice Byrne lays out here isn't necessarily about fixing the other person. I mean, they might never change.
They probably won't.
Right, they probably won't. It's really about closing those background apps. It's about eliminating the hot coals from your own hands so that you can just stop getting burned.
Which sounds like the ultimate form of self-care, honestly. But if holding the coal is destroying us, how exactly do we put it down? Especially when we feel, entirely justified in holding it.
And we usually do feel justified, but that brings us to the actual mechanics of what Byrne calls magic practice number 15.
Okay, lay it on us.
The instructions are highly specific and, I should warn you, they require a pretty significant amount of mental effort. You are instructed to choose one difficult, problematic, or broken relationship.
Just one to start with.
Yeah, just one. It can be a current relationship, or it can be a past relationship with someone who isn't even in your life anymore at all.
And once you have that person in mind, you have to sit down and make a written list of exactly 10 things you are genuinely grateful for about that chosen person.
10 things, which sounds like a lot.
It sounds like a ton. And the syntax you use to write it actually matters too. You are supposed to write insert name here, I'm grateful for, and then the thing.
Right, you literally address them by name in your journal or your notebook.
Which is intense.
It is, but the physical act of writing is really important here. By forcing yourself to actually write it down rather than just sort of vaguely thinking it, you are slowing down your cognitive processing.
You have to focus.
Exactly. You are forcing your brain to sequentially build a complete thought, which physically interrupts the fast, automatic spiral of the anger.
Okay, I need to pause right here and speak for anyone listening who is immediately pushing back against this.
Yeah.
Because if you're listening to this and rolling your eyes thinking, oh, great, this is just toxic positivity.
I totally get that reaction.
Right. I am right there with you. Because finding 10 genuinely good things about someone who deeply, fundamentally wronged you, it feels like we are just letting them off the hook for their bad behavior.
It feels like a betrayal of yourself, almost.
Yeah. If a boss was terribly abusive or a partner completely betrayed you, finding 10 things to thank them for feels like you are validating their abuse. It feels like you're saying what they did was somehow okay.
And that is, without a doubt, the most massive hurdle when anyone attempts this kind of psychological pivot. It's a completely natural, understandable resistance.
It's the ego trying to protect itself.
Precisely. But Byrne highlights a crucial rule for this practice. She says this exercise is entirely divorced from the concept of justice or validation or who is right.
Oh, that's a huge distinction.
It really is. She isn't saying you should reach out to your toxic ex and invite them back into your life. She isn't saying you have to excuse the harm they caused you. She is simply giving you a neurological tool to sever your emotional tether to them.
So it's not for them at all. It's entirely for you.
Exactly. It's completely selfish in the best way possible. The human brain actually cannot hold a state of genuine gratitude and a state of hostile defensiveness simultaneously.
Wait, really? They can't happen at the same time?
No, they rely on completely conflicting neural pathways. You literally cannot be deeply stressed and deeply grateful at the exact same moment.
Wow.
So Byrne writes that you must dig for the gold in the relationship, even if it is incredibly hard to find.
Which it will be.
Right. If the relationship is terrible right now, you have to think back to the history of it before it deteriorated. Or if it was never good, like, say, a consistently toxic boss from day one.
Right. What do you do then?
You have to think hard about any baseline good qualities they possess. Maybe they were punctual. Maybe they dressed well. The fundamental insight here is that discovering this nugget of gold isn't about rewarding them for their behavior. It's about forcing your own brain out of its defensive posture.
Okay, let's make this real and look at the detailed case study Byrne provides in the source material, because I think that helps ground it.
Yeah, let's do that. She uses the example of a woman dealing with a highly volatile dynamic with her ex-husband, whom she names Paul.
Right.
They share children, the marriage ended badly, and there's just a lot of residual pain there. It's a very, very common scenario.
Very common. So instead of fuming about a custody handoff or some text message disagreement, she sits down to write this list of 10 things. What does she actually write? Because finding 10 things for a messy ex seems daunting.
It does. I'll read a few directly from the text to show the shift in perspective. The first one is, Paul, I'm grateful for our time together. While our marriage did end, I learned a lot. I am so much wiser today, and I use what I learned from our marriage in many of my relationships today.
Okay, notice how that takes a perceived failure, like the end of a marriage, and totally reframes it as an educational foundation for her present life.
Right, it's a huge reframe.
She isn't saying the end of the marriage was fun or good. She's extracting the data from the experience and finding gratitude for her own personal growth.
Exactly, she's taking the power back. Another one she writes is, Paul, I am grateful to you for our children. The joy I receive from them every day could not be without you.
Which is an undeniable fact.
Right. And then she writes this one. She says, Paul, I'm grateful to you for the hard work and long hours you put in to support our family while I was at home taking care of our children. It was a big responsibility to have all of us dependent on you, so thank you.
Wait, I have to challenge that one. Thanking him for working long hours. I can hear my friends who have gone through divorces literally screaming at their speakers right now.
Oh, I know. It sounds completely counterintuitive.
Usually the long hours and never being home are cited as the exact reason the marriage fell apart in the first place.
Hmm.
How is she justifying thanking him for the very thing that probably caused her so much pain?
It's a great question. She's doing it because she is separating the raw fact from her emotional reaction to that fact.
Okay, explain that.
Yes, the raw fact is he worked long hours. Her old neural pathway says he worked long hours, meaning he abandoned me, meaning I am angry. Right. But by forcing herself to find gratitude, she consciously rewires the pathway. She says he worked long hours, meaning we had a roof over our heads, meaning I didn't have to carry that specific financial burden alone.
Oh, wow. It is the exact same fact.
The exact same fact, but it generates a completely different physiological response in her body now. She isn't changing the history. She's changing how the history affects her nervous system today.
That is so powerful. And the list goes on in the book. She thanks him for being there when she went through a difficult time of grief. She thanks him for times she was sick and he took care of her.
Yeah, really leaning into those specific memories.
She even thanks him simply for wanting to continue being a father to their children.
Yeah.
Just acknowledging that the kids mean as much to him as they do to her. By the time you get to the end of a list like that, Byrne says you should feel much better about the person and the relationship as a whole.
Because the ultimate point is to reach a place where you simply don't have any bad feelings toward them anymore. You're completely neutral.
Because those bad feelings are only harming you. They're your hot coals.
Exactly. And Byrne notes that every relationship is different. For a really deep wound, an incredibly heavy hot coal, you might have to repeat this specific practice over several days until you actually feel the absence of that negative emotion.
Now, Byrne also shares another incredible case study in the text, and this one is about healing profound grief, which is obviously a very different kind of broken relationship.
Very different, yeah.
It's a relationship severed by death, not by anger or betrayal. She tells the story of her own mother and father.
This is a deeply, deeply moving example of gratitude's transformative power. And it really shows the flexibility of this whole framework.
Yeah, she says her parents fell in love virtually at first sight and had just the most beautiful marriage she'd ever seen. So when her father died, her mother understandably suffered from enormous, just debilitating grief.
It was completely crushing for her.
It lasted for months. The sheer absence of him was consuming her. But then she began to use this practice of gratitude.
And we really need to pause here because from a psychological standpoint, the pivot her mother made is a massive, massive leap.
How so?
Well, when someone is in a deep depressive state following a profound loss, the brain tends to project a future that is completely devoid of joy. It's a survival mechanism, really. You just brace yourself for the worst.
Right, everything looks bleak.
So it's one thing to look backward and be thankful for good memories. It's entirely another to look at a terrifying, lonely future and actively scan it for things to appreciate.
So how did she actually do that? Because it sounds nearly impossible when you are in the thick of really heavy grief. You just don't want to do anything.
Right. Well, she began with the past, using gratitude to actively recall all the wonderful decades of happiness she had shared with her husband. She intentionally focused on the presence of the good, rather than the sudden absence of the person.
Okay, starting with the memories.
But the truly courageous step, as Byrne outlines it, was when she started looking for things to be grateful for in the future. She started remembering things she'd always wanted to do, like traveling or spending time with friends.
Things she put off.
Exactly. Things she simply didn't have the time to do when her husband was alive and required so much companionship and care.
Which is such an uncomfortable thing for a grieving person to even admit to themselves.
Oh, incredibly uncomfortable.
To admit that their profound loss actually freed up time for something positive. It feels almost like a betrayal of the grief itself.
It does. But by acknowledging it, by taking the step of gratitude for her future, Byrne says opportunities to fulfill those old dreams miraculously just poured in.
Because her brain was finally looking for them.
Exactly. Once you start looking for opportunities instead of threats, your brain actually allows you to see them. They were likely always there, all along, but her grief was filtering them out.
Wow.
Gratitude actually gave her a new, rich life by shifting her focus from what was lost to what was newly possible.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because whether we are talking about grief or anger, this all comes back to the core mechanism of unilateral power.
Yes.
If we think about a toxic, difficult relationship, like, say, an ex or a combative coworker. It's essentially like a game of emotional tug of war.
I like that visual.
Right. You're pulling, they're pulling, there's all this tension, you're exhausted, and your hands are just getting rope burned from holding on so tight.
Yeah, and getting nowhere.
Exactly. What Byrne is suggesting is that if you just drop the rope, if you completely neutralize your side of the dynamic with gratitude, the entire dynamic of the tension collapses instantly.
Instantly.
They can keep pulling, they can keep being toxic, but they're just falling backward into the mud. There's literally no tension left for you to absorb.
That perfectly illustrates how unilateral transformation physically works in interpersonal dynamics. It only takes one person to magically change a relationship because a dynamic, by definition, requires two people pushing against each other.
Right, you need resistance.
And if you do this with a current relationship, Byrne states you will see the dynamic begin to change miraculously before your eyes simply because you are no longer providing that resistance.
And if it's a past relationship,
If it's a past relationship, someone you never even speak to anymore, you will just feel an immense sense of peace.
and as a huge side effect, you will see your other current relationships begin to improve too. Because you aren't carrying that ambient anger around with you everywhere you go.
Right, it bleeds into everything.
You aren't operating with zero RAM anymore. You suddenly have the bandwidth to be a good partner, a good friend, a good parent.
You've totally lowered your baseline level of hostility, but, we do need to address a very practical reality here.
Let me guess. The reality that trying to do this from a cold start in the middle of a terrible day feels basically impossible.
That would be the one.
Because if I'm late to work, I've spilled coffee on myself, and I get a nasty email from my boss, I am absolutely not sitting down to write 10 nice things about the person who ruined my morning.
No one is.
So how does Byrne suggest we actually get into the right headspace to do this heavy emotional lifting?
You've hit the nail on the head. This is why Chapter 15 doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It is sandwiched within a daily framework of gratitude that Byrne prescribes throughout the book.
Okay, the daily practices.
Right. The exercise to heal a relationship is supported by two daily bookend practices, a morning routine and a nighttime routine.
Let's walk through those for the listeners.
Yeah.
In the morning, she outlines a practice called Count Your Blessings.
Yeah.
You literally wake up and make a list of 10 blessings in your life. You write down exactly why you're grateful for each one. Then you go back, reread the list, and at the end of each blessing, you say what she calls the magic words, thank you, thank you, thank you, and you try to feel as much gratitude as you possibly can.
Yes. And we should clarify something about the phrase magic words here.
Yeah, please do.
I know it sounds a bit esoteric, maybe even a little mystical, but if we strip away the whimsical language, what she's actually describing is a linguistic trigger.
Like a habit loop.
Exactly. It's a psychological anchor. Saying thank you repeatedly acts as a cue to your nervous system to solidify the feeling you just generated by writing the list.
And what is the actual purpose of doing this first thing in the morning? Why not at lunch?
By doing the Count Your Blessings exercise first thing, you are actively priming your brain's reticular activating system.
Okay, pause. Reticular activating system.
Mhm.
Let's explain this like I'm 5. Walk me through what that actually is.
Sure. Think of the reticular activating system, or the RAS, like the bouncer at the door of a very exclusive club. And in this case, the club is your conscious mind.
Okay, I track with that.
At any given moment, there are millions of pieces of sensory data trying to get into your brain. The bouncer filters out the useless stuff and only lets in what you tell it is important.
Right.
So if you decide you want to buy a red car, suddenly you see red cars everywhere on the highway. The bouncer is letting them in. By doing this gratitude practice in the morning, you are essentially handing the bouncer a VIP list of positive things. You're telling your brain, look for things to appreciate today. Let the good stuff into the club.
So you are generating a baseline chemical state of appreciation before the day even starts. You're warming up the muscles.
Exactly. If you've already spent the morning generating deep gratitude for your health or your home or just the fact that you woke up at all, you have emotional momentum.
Which makes everything else easier.
Right. You approach the difficult relationship list not from a place of emotional deficit, but from a place of emotional surplus.
And then the day concludes with the nighttime routine, which she calls the magic rock practice.
Yes, the magic rock.
Just before you go to sleep at night, you hold this designated rock or object in one hand. You think back over your entire day, find the absolute best thing that happened, and you say your linguistic trigger, thank you for that specific thing.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the brilliance of the magic rock practice is twofold. First, Holding a physical object physically grounds you in the present moment through somatosensory feedback.
It gets you out of your head and into your body.
Exactly. Second, finding the best thing forces a comparative analysis of your day. Your brain has to scan through all the events, sorting out the positive ones from the negative ones, and crowning a winner.
So you can't just dwell on the bad stuff.
No, you can't. This prioritizes positive memories right before you enter the memory consolidation phase of sleep. It basically ensures you don't take any residual stress from the day into your subconscious.
So it really is an entire ecosystem of gratitude. The morning and evening routines create a safe, positive psychological container which ensures the difficult work of forgiving and reframing a toxic relationship is supported by a foundation of general well-being.
It's a highly systematic, very clever approach to emotional regulation.
So what does this all mean for you, listening right now? The core takeaway from Byrne's framework is profoundly liberating. You have the ultimate power to dictate your emotional reality.
You really do.
You do not have to wait for an apology that might never come. You don't have to wait for the other person to see the light or change their behavior or treat you fairly.
Because they probably won't.
Exactly. You can unilaterally use the focused power of gratitude to close those background apps, draining your energy, and turn the hot coals burning your life into gold.
And Byrne's actionable advice moving forward is to not let the coals get too hot in the first place. She advises that the moment a relationship becomes challenging, like the very second you feel that resentment building, deploy this practice immediately.
Don't wait years.
Right. Don't wait. Stop the difficulties before they grow and increase the positive dynamic proactively.
Which brings up a really fascinating thought to leave you with today. If digging for gratitude can unilaterally disarm the pain of our absolute worst, most broken relationships, I mean, imagine what might happen if you proactively applied that exact same focus to the perfectly fine everyday relationships in your life.
Oh, that's a great point.
What if you made a list of 10 things you were grateful for about your perfectly average coworker or, the barista you see every morning before a fire ever even has the chance to start?
It could change everything.
It really could. If we drop the hot coals, our hands are finally free to build something incredible. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.